watch enthusiasts. Now today I'd like to unbox my new Tudor, and I won't say what it is yet. Obviously after a few days, once most of you have seen the review, I will change the title of the review to give the name of the watch. But until then I'm going to keep it a surprise, if you will. So of course it comes in this beautiful Tudor box, which will for now disguise what I bought. But as you might have noticed, I'm in a new setup, if you will, for the reviews I make, and this is designed to make the reviews far more professional, and I think give a better view of the watch without all the reflections and the poor lighting which I was using previously. Now, before I open the box, I would like to talk about the buying process and the reason why I came to the conclusion of buying this watch. Now, originally I was considering a black bay in maybe the blue or the red. I wasn't too keen on the black because I thought it was too Submariner-esque. But I did try on one of the ETA versions of the Black Bay, and though I love the aesthetic of this watch, and I was leaning towards the ETA, having looked at both the in-house and the ETA, because I like the reduced text and the inclusion of the Tudor rose on the dial rather than the crest, which I find a little bit less old-fashioned, a little less elegant. But I tried it on, and I found the proportions weren't really... They didn't really suit my wrist. I have quite flat wrists. And the fact that the Black Bay doesn't really have the vintage proportions of having a thin case and a slightly thicker dial and thicker crystal, and then a flat case back, whereas here it had a very wide and flat-sided case, with, again, a flat case back, but with a very narrow bezel, and it simply didn't look right on my wrist. It didn't fit correctly. So I tried out the Tudor Black Bay 36 and was very pleasantly surprised. And this watch was, of course, the 36mm bezel-less and less vintage-inspired version of the Black Bay. And I must say I liked it a lot, and I did like the smaller size too. Now, this watch, though, I was unable to get hold of on the strap, which was really the version I wanted to get hold of. And I suppose really one ought to buy it on the bracelet. But in my opinion, I do find that the strap is more comfortable on a daily basis, and also I rarely wear watches on bracelets simply because I worry about scratching them. This may seem silly, but personally I think it is actually not a bad thing to consider really when buying a bracelet, because of course those bracelets from Tudor are £400 or £500 to replace. So you can understand my concern when really my budget for this watch was quite limited in terms of service prices and so on, which made an ETA or ETA based Tudor watch I think a more reasonable investment. Now, before I open this box, I would like to say that one of my viewers contacted me about the sale of a Black Bay in blue, and was very kind to present me the offer, because of course I was considering buying a Tudor. But I would like to say that if anyone is interested in buying this watch, then please just email me at the email down below, and I can arrange for you to be in contact with him if you're interested in the purchase. And this one is on the blue leather strap, and obviously with that nylon woven strap which comes with it. Now, without any further ado, this watch comes in this beautiful, or rather beautifully made cardboard box on its exterior, which is very old-fashioned. It's way on the basis that really watches don't tend to come in cardboard boxes anymore. Most brands stopped that in the 90s, but I rather like this because it does protect the inner case. So then we have Tudor embossed in the top and then coloured with that crest, which is of course the symbol of fortitude and strength in Tudors, as opposed to the elegance which the rose used to denote. Now I'll just take this outer box off and be right back with you. So inside that box is this beautifully finished piano black case with Tudor and their crest once more in red placed on the top. It also has a nicely hinged top, and I shall now pop it open to show you which watch I bought. Now, I bought this watch having tried it on once, and I fell in love really with the proportions of this watch and the way it sat on the wrist. So without any further ado, it is the Heritage Ranger. Now, this is a watch which I've long admired, but I never thought I'd actually buy, simply because I tend to be more of a dive watch sort of person. But I must say I was really taken by this watch on the simple tobacco-coloured leather strap, in this very soft and supple calfskin leather. I was also very impressed by this additional strap, but I shall show you that in a minute after showing you the watch itself and the paperwork. So, of course, the watch itself comes with a manual. I shan't go through this, but it's rather nicely finished, and the inside of the box is this sort of fake faux leather, if you will, leatherette sort of finish, which is very soft on the watch. Now, I'll just remove the various parts. Of course, it comes with the additional camouflage strap, which I think is beautifully woven considering the price of this watch, and really does put most other NATO straps to shame. Though for about £200 new, these straps certainly are quite dear to buy without the watch, so I do think it's nice that Tudor include them. Then, of course, the watch comes here on this beautiful leather strap, which is woven in a contrasting beige colour along, and then with this beautiful deployant, which I think is a very practical choice. And though I do like a tang and buckle, this certainly does modernise the concept of wearing a leather strap. So I'll just put the box to one side and return to the watch. Okay, so here is the watch out of the box and off the pillow which is included. And I'll just move the hands away from each other, but the watch has a 41mm diameter, so it's quite a wearable size, but they have modified the traditional oyster case by giving these curves to the case along the edges, which makes the whole watch slightly more dressy, but while maintaining an old-fashioned aesthetic, and giving the whole watch slightly more rounded shape than a normal oyster. Now, the crown sits very proud of the stainless steel case, and this is what 316, not 904, as Tudor don't use the 904 stainless steel, which of course Rolex do. Now, the crown is a screw-down crown and does sit very proud, with an anodized aluminium break between the case and the crown, but in this case it's not anodized in a colour, it's just strengthened and finished. Then the crown is bead blasted to the rest of the case's brushed finish, apart from this polished bevel. And the top of the crown, rather, has if I can just get to focus, the double Tudor rose, which we've seen on black bays previously. I do apologise for the focus here. See, my camera's having trouble with the new Lightbox setup. But here we have the double Tudor rose, which I think is a very attractive finish and feature to have on the end of this crown. Now, these new Tudor crowns are very distinctive because they have this heavily ribbed finish rather than having the larger grips, if you will, that a Rolex crown has. And I rather like this. I think it's a modern touch to a very classically inspired watch. Now, this obviously unscrews like so, in the normal way, in the anti-clockwise direction, and that does allow the watch to be water resistant to 150 meters. So this watch really is a watch which could easily be swum with no real concerns. Now, it winds very, very easily, very nicely, and very, very smoothly. It certainly is a fantastically well-made watch in that respect. Of course, the crown pulls out once, because, of course, there's no date, so it comes to its one position where, of course, it's hacking, as you've seen its hand winding. So if I move the hands off each other and away from any features of the dial, just so you get a better view, you can quite clearly see the dial is this matte finish. I'm not sure if I can show you that very clearly, but it does have a very clear matte finish, which is different to a great deal of other watches with a semi-matte dial finish, whereas here we see a very matte, unreflective finish, which I think allows the shininess and the reflection of those hands to seem all the more attractive. Now, if we look at the dial itself, one can notice that the numerals, notably at 12, 9, 3, and 6, have been painted on top of a white patch. So effectively, the numerals and the marks have been painted on with simple white paint or finish, and then have had Lume painted in this three-dimensional hand-done manner over the top to give an old-fashioned aesthetic, which one doesn't see in modern watches. And I certainly do think it is a very attractive feature. The hands are these very interesting shapes. So we have a simple pointy pencil-style hand of Rolex, really, which one can see on Submariners, GMTs, and so on, which is, of course, a typical hand, which is very legible and very clearly distinguished from the hour hand. But this hand has quite an interesting feature where the Lume stops quite a long way from the end of the hand, which means you have this reflection where the end of the hand vanishes and reappears, which I think is very elegant. The hour hand is this, what I like to call a spade-shaped hand. I don't think that's the technical term, but it certainly is what it looks like, with this shovel-shaped end, which is a nice change to the normal Mercedes-style hands, and I think is a more simple and a more classic look, which of course was featured on the original version of this watch in the middle of last century. But of course, the size of this watch has grown from that 36 millimeters well, 34 or 36mm size of the original, depending on where you measure it from, and then here to the 41. But I think this has lost none of its original charm in the process. Now, the second hand is a red hand, but it's this raspberry sort of red, which I think is a very attractive colour. And it's not a bright, brash sort of red that you might see on for example, a Ferrari, but rather it is a more dull red. But certainly, I think it's in keeping with the classic look of this watch. Around the edge of the dial are these these second or minute marks, which are very classic and don't have the ring around the edge, which one can see on, for example, the Black Bay, giving a real air of simplicity and refinement to this wristwatch. Now, sitting atop that beautifully finished dial is quite a heavily domed crystal, but this crystal is rather interesting in its design, because it doesn't really resemble any modern domed crystals. And this is because it has this very, very abrupt lift across the edge, like an original plexiglass crystal or acrylic crystal, and then it domes over the surface of the watch very smoothly and very discreetly, I think. It does add a certain depth to the watch, which does mean this could get caught on something and potentially be chipped. But I must say, with its rounded edges, I doubt this crystal would pose any real problems, unlike certain sharper crystals on other watches. Now, the case of the watch, altogether from bottom to the top of the crystal, is 12 or so millimeters. It may well be slightly over 12 millimeters, but really one doesn't feel the crystal because it slips very easily under a cuff. And the bezel is also slightly rounded. It doesn't have that flat shape of, for example, a Black Bay 36 or something like a Datejust, or an Explorer rather. It has more of a rounded shape, like, for example, a modern Oyster Perpetual. But in fact, it is brushed with this very, very discreet and I think very elegant polished edge. The sides of the case are brushed, unlike most Oyster cases, which I think does make this watch appear altogether more tool-like than anything else. Now, I will point out that if you do see a few little scratches and nicks on this watch, that's because this particular example, it was a display model before I bought it, but I felt that actually it was better, more worth my time to receive a fairly substantial discount on this watch, rather than wait until a new version of this watch is available a couple of weeks later. 12 or so weeks later. So I felt that I got a better deal with this watch, since I still got the full warranty, but without the concern of putting my first scratches on this watch, considering it already had a few hairline scratches and abrasions. So on that basis, I felt that this display model was a better choice than buying a brand new one in the end. So you may notice a few small scratches. There's a tiny scuff here, and then again another very minute sort of piece of wear here, but really nothing to be worried about. So if you do spot those, that's the reason for their being. Now, the other side of the case shows another interesting feature of this watch, and that is that the case actually does curve, as I stated, I think, at the beginning of the video. It curves rather than having these flatter sides, which are more typical of an Oyster-style case, which I think gives this watch a more elegant look, and very nicely balances that more tooly aesthetic of having the brushed finish everywhere. So I certainly do think that was a very nice choice on the part of Tudor. Now, if we move over to the case back, one sees, and I've left the sticker on here, one sees a very standard Tudor Rolex-style case back with these edges, which are proprietary to their watches, or at least were until various other companies started using them. But it's certainly not a standard backing. Now, the caseback isn't as heavily domed as certain vintage models, for example. If I can show you the profile, it really is quite smooth and doesn't really protrude from the caseback at all, whereas previous ones would lift directly up from this lower plate. Here there is a recess to allow the centre of the caseback to sit lower and allow the whole watch to sit close to the wrist. Nonetheless, though, it does still have that slight lift on the back, which means that the area in contact with the wrist is quite small, making the whole watch more comfortable. From this view, you can also see another major feature of this, being the holes case, and this means that you can change the strap or bracelet much more easily by simply popping it out this way. Now, though that doesn't give you the control over stopping the spring bar from shooting out and scratching the back of your lugs, it certainly does make it more practical if you are careful, for example, with a strap where you can easily grip the spring bar while removing it. So I do think this is a very helpful feature on the part of Tudor. Now, the movement inside this watch is, of course, a Tudor 2824, And this is effectively an ETA 2824, but it's been modified quite extensively by Tudor to give better reliability and a few better features. So notably, it includes a proprietary Rolex / Tudor shock resistance system rather than normal Inca block to make it more resilient to shocks. Equally, the way the balance wheel is attached is more firm and more substantial, with larger attachments and mounts, in addition to a different type of regulation, making it even more shock resistant. So they have produced various innovations and differences between the original and this movement, and I do think that's a good thing. It does retain the reliability and the traditional, I suppose, the traditional fact that the Tudor is powered by an ETA and not an in-house movement. So I suppose in a sense this watch is more true to the original, though of course having an in-house movement would be superb. Now, if one looks at the strap, and this strap I think is a very nice example of a strap from Tudor, and this comes in a slightly darker colour to other straps in this sort of brown colour. For example, the Black Bay 36 strap is much lighter than this in a sort of calf tan finish, while the bund strap, which this watch is also available on, which of course passes behind the back of the watch to avoid contact between the case and the wrist. And these were originally invented for aviation, and were used so if your watch heated up in a fire inside the cockpit, it wouldn't burn your wrist. So it was sort of a precursor to the NATO strap, which we use so extensively these days. And this strap is this lovely tobacco colour, which is a dark brown, but still sits within those mid-brown colours and is emphasised by the fact that it has this light contrast stitching. Now, this goes round into the buckle, and I haven't removed any of these stickers yet, just because I think, frankly, this does protect the buckle itself, or rather the clasp, from the contact with the safety lock. And here we see a fully brushed Tudor style of clasp, and this is very typical and does match their bracelet clasp, which feature this finish as well. And this, of course, mirrors the Tudor crest. Of course, making a Tudor rose-shaped clasp would perhaps be rather gaudy and wouldn't really work as well as this. So I do like the fact that they've used their logo to produce a clasp. Now, all of the sections in between are all milled and machined beautifully to continue that theme of the crest, as you can see here, the shield. And then we do also see ceramic bearings here and beads to reduce wear between the components over time. Now, one thing which I'd like to draw your attention to is this mounting at the other side. And this is the way they've mounted the other side of the deployant. It means that if this deployant were to be damaged or to break, or in fact if you wanted to put this deployant onto another strap, if say this strap wore out, you can, because it has this space where the tang of a buckle would normally go, and which is a really fantastic detail from Tudor, and does again show the attention to detail which they put into their watches. Now the clasp closes like this. One simply slips this section into here, into these simple keepers. And it's true to say this strap, apart from the deployant, is exactly the same as any other strap, meaning that you could use this deployant on other straps. And this simply clips down like so, and then meets the top like that. Again, also the edges on here are all fantastically made, and there are also these grips on the side to make opening the strap slightly easier. Of course, one other piece which is included in the set of this watch is this beautifully finished camouflage strap. Now, these are hand woven in France by the same people who make the Vatican and the Pope's robes, so certainly that does show the quality. And there are various videos on YouTube I'm sure you can find which do show how this is woven by a loom, rather than being simply made and quite cheaply made like a lot of NATO straps. Now, I believe this is still a nylon blend, but it has been woven in a tapestry style, so these aren't printed on. This camouflage texture is actually stitched in, which is truly beautiful and really does show the attention to detail of Tudor. The fittings are also beautifully made. They really are wonderful, with brushing on the top and then polishing on the sides. And sorry, there's a bit of a smudge there, a bit of dirt, but that does show how much I've been wearing this strap. And incidentally, this does have the same distance between lugs as as my Seiko 55 Fathoms, so I've been using it there too. Where it's I suppose it's rather comical that I'm wearing a strap which costs as much as the watch I'm wearing it on. But nonetheless, it's a wonderful strap, and also is adjustable here, so you can actually slide this portion through the clasp to lengthen the strap or shorten it. Luckily, out of the box, my wrist fits about here, so I really am using most of the strap up. But it means that you can wear this strap without having too much slack sticking out of the watch, if you will, and out of the end of the strap, which I often find aggravating because it catches on cuffs and so on NATO straps. So I do appreciate the fact that Tudor have done this. Now, the machining of the clasp itself again mirrors that the top of the crest or the shield of Tudor, and then we also see these bars, these tubular bars on either side of the tang to keep it in place and to avoid it coming down on the brushed finish. As you can see, there's no play left and right in this, meaning that it will always land in that grooved recess in the top, which is certainly a nice feature, and again does demonstrate that ever-present quality which is seen in these Tudors. Now, this is the watch in the dark with its lume simply lit up by ambient light. So I've been wearing this watch all morning, and I've found this is the level of luminosity after a day in the sun, as opposed to having been shone under a torch, which is something I don't usually do. But with the quality of the lume on this watch, I really do think it's appropriate. Now, I apologise for the little flashing light you might see. That's the laser autofocus of my camera, which is trying to judge depth there. But apart from that, you can clearly see that the dial has these fairly slim numerals for the 3, 6, 9, and 12. And that's because, of course, they're painted onto the white background and show a much sharper, much cleaner, and an altogether smaller layout and floors and space, if you will, taken by the lume than the actual numeral that you see during the day and in the light. The hands are also very, very well illuminated in this green colour, with the parallelogram style of tip on the second hand being very clearly legible and visible. The pencil minute hand is also again very clear with a simple straight strip of lume. And then that spade hand is very well lumed to give it a very clear and distinct silhouette in the dark, which I think is a good layout, because it does mean that this watch is very legible in the dark. And actually, I would say this watch is as legible as an equivalent dive watch, which is certainly high praise, because a great deal of field watches like this watch don't live up to their diving relatives and other models which would work for a diver. So I'll just turn the lights back on and then show you a wrist shot before concluding the video. So here you have the Tudor on my wrist, and as you can see, it fits very, very nicely over the top of the wrist, with a very small back footprint on the top of my wrist, but nonetheless with the lugs curving down to give a very, very comfortable wear, which slips very easily under a cuff. As you can see, the strap does fit very nicely, and I haven't broken in the strap fully yet, so this strap very much is similar to the one you would get if you bought this watch new. So you can tell it does fit very nicely out of the box. Also, that crown doesn't cause any problems, despite the fact that it does protrude quite a long way. I'll try and show you the movement of my wrist. It really isn't impeded in any way by that crown, which is certainly high praise for a crown of this size and dimension, especially which juts out of the case in this manner. So I certainly do think Tudor may have done a very, very good job of making this watch very comfortable and wearable on a daily basis for the average consumer, with really any size wrist, because at 41mm it really is a sweet spot for people with smaller wrists and larger wrists alike to enjoy. Anyway, I'll conclude this video here. So thank you very much for watching. Do please like, share and subscribe to help the channel and see more content in future. And do please leave your comments down below as to whether you're surprised or your thoughts in general about this watch. So thank you very much for watching. This is I'm on the Watch Guy, over and out.